I never thought I'd notice the way Coach Matthews looked at me, not because I'm oblivious, far from it, but because, well, he was my coach. Professional, no nonsense, the kind of guy who barely cracked a smile during practice. For the longest time, I figured his job was to be tough and keep everyone in line, especially me. I mean, I was the new kid on the swim team, a total awkward mess trying to keep up, so I didn't expect anything beyond the usual work harder pep talks. But then things started to shift, and I caught myself wondering if maybe I was just imagining it. You know how it is when you notice something small and suddenly it feels like it's everywhere? Like, he'd glance at me a little longer during drills, or call me aside after practice with a different kind of intensity in his eyes. It wasn't just coaching anymore. It felt personal. Let me back up a bit. I'm Josh, a senior in high school, and swimming has been my go-to for as long as I can remember. I joined the swim team mostly because I wanted to fit in somewhere and stay out of trouble. It wasn't like I was aiming for a scholarship or anything crazy, just a way to keep busy and maybe make some friends. When Coach Matthews showed up last season, he was kind of a mystery to all of us. New town, new coach, very strict, and honestly, a bit intimidating. He was tall, lean, with these sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. He didn't waste time cracking jokes or trying to be cool. He just expected results. The first few weeks, I was just trying to stay afloat, literally and figuratively. I was constantly messing up my strokes, missing timing, and generally feeling like the slowest guy in the pool. Coach barely gave me any attention, which was probably his polite way of saying, "You're on your own." But then something weird happened after the third week. We were doing sprint repeats, and I remember feeling completely wiped out, ready to quit. Coach called me over for a quick break, which wasn't unusual, but instead of barking orders, he just stood there, watching me catch my breath. "Josh," he said quietly, "you've got potential. You just need to believe it." That caught me off guard. This wasn't the usual tough love speech. It was softer, almost like he was revealing a secret. And after that, things didn't go back to normal. He started tweaking my form personally, pulling me aside more often, and even showing up a bit earlier some days to work one-on-one. I wanted to tell myself it was just because I was improving, but the way he looked at me, that something in his eyes made my heart skip in a way I wasn't prepared for. I haven't told anyone else this because, well, coaches and players don't mix like that, right? But every time he stands by the pool with that focused, almost intense expression, I catch myself wondering if maybe, just maybe, there's more going on than just swimming drills. And honestly, I don't know if I'm scared, excited, or just totally confused. The weird part? Last Friday after practice, everything kind of flipped. He asked me to stay back and talk. Just me and him, under those harsh fluorescent lights in the empty locker room. I was expecting the usual, "you need to work harder" speech, but what I got, well, it changed everything. The locker room was quiet, except for the sound of water dripping somewhere nearby and the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and I was suddenly very aware of how sweaty my palms were. Coach Matthews stood leaning against the bench, arms crossed, looking unusually serious. "Josh," he said, his voice low, "can I be honest with you?" I nodded, even though I wasn't sure I was ready for honesty from him. I mean, honesty from Coach Matthews usually meant a brutal critique of my swim technique, or some motivational speech so tough it made you want to quit. But this wasn't that. He shifted, running a hand through his hair like he was trying to figure out how to say what he needed to say without screwing it up. "You're improving, no doubt about it. But I've noticed you holding back. Not just in the water, outside of it too. Like you're scared to really put yourself out there." I swallowed hard. "I don't know what you mean," I mumbled, suddenly feeling like a kid caught doing something they shouldn't. He smiled, and I swear it was the first time I'd seen him smile in person, like a real one, not some polite nod. "Yeah, you do. I see it when you're around the team, how you avoid looking me in the eye sometimes. And in here," he gestured around the locker room, "when you're alone with me." My mouth dried up. "I don't avoid looking at you," I said quickly, even though my voice came out shaky. Coach took a step closer, just enough that I could smell the faint scent of whatever cologne he wore. Cedarwood, maybe? Subtle, but kind of warm. "You do. And I'm not blind, Josh. I know you're wrestling with something." The air felt thick all of a sudden, like the room had shrunk. I fidgeted, trying to find the right words, but my mind was racing. Was I imagining all this? Had I been reading too much into his attention? But no, something was definitely different about him, and now he was calling me out on it. Finally, I blurted out, "Are you saying you think I'm gay?" There. I said it. The words hung between us like they weighed a ton. I braced for whatever was coming next. Judgment, denial, awkward silence. Instead, Coach Matthews chuckled softly, shaking his head. "No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying I know you're hiding something, and I want you to know that it's okay. You're not alone, Josh." That was unexpected. I blinked, trying to process what he'd said. This guy who had been this rigid, almost intimidating presence was now telling me I wasn't alone. It felt like a lifeline, like a permission slip to be more than just the kid who couldn't keep up with the lap times. I took a deep breath and decided to be honest. I am. "I'm gay," I admitted, voice barely above a whisper. "I've never told anyone on the team, not my parents, not my friends. I'm scared. I don't know how people will react." Coach nodded slowly, then smiled again, this time with a kind of relief, like he'd been waiting for me to say it. "Thanks for telling me." I know it's hard. There was a pause, an odd quiet that felt comfortable, like the storm between us had calmed. "I'm going to be honest with you too," he said, stepping even closer. "I'm gay as well. I've just kept it under wraps for years because I didn't want it to affect my coaching, or how people see me." My eyes widened. Suddenly, this all made so much sense. The way he had looked at me, the way he seemed to want to connect but held back. "So you get it," I said, a little smile breaking through the nerves. He nodded. "More than you know." We stood there for a moment, the distance between us suddenly feeling charged with something new, something electric. I realized I had never really looked at Coach Matthews as a person before, just as the authority figure who made me do endless laps. But now it was like I saw him for the first time. "Look," he said after a beat, "I don't want to make things weird. Team comes first. But if you ever need someone to talk to about anything, I'm here." No judgment. That offer felt like the biggest gift. I wanted to say so much more, but all I could manage was a nod. The next day at practice, things felt different. We were back in the pool, but instead of the usual tension, there was this subtle understanding between us. He was still strict. Coach Matthews wasn't about to go soft on me, but there was a new gentleness in how he corrected my strokes, the way he caught my eye and gave me a small nod of encouragement. And then, after practice, he surprised me again. "Meet me by the bleachers in 10 minutes. He said quietly as I was packing up my gear. I almost didn't go, but curiosity got the better of me. When I showed up, he was already there, sitting on the edge of the bench, looking relaxed for once. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over the empty field beside the pool. "Ever been out here after dark?" he asked. I shook my head, settling beside him. He pulled out a water bottle, unscrewed the cap, and handed it to me. "I come here sometimes when I need to clear my head. Away from everything." We sat in silence for a while, watching the sky turn orange and purple. Then he turned to me and said, "You ever think about what comes after school?" "After all this?" I hesitated. "Not really. I mean, I guess I want to keep swimming, maybe at college." He smiled, but it was tinged with something wistful. "Good. You've got the talent. You just need to believe in yourself like I believe in you." I looked at him and saw something I hadn't expected. Hope. Not just for swimming, but for whatever this was between us, whatever it could become. As I walked home that night, I kept replaying everything Coach Matthews had said, the way he looked at me, the way he made me feel like I wasn't alone in the world. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but for the first time in a long time, I was excited to find out. The days that followed felt like a strange blur, like I was moving through the usual rhythm of school and swim practice, but everything underneath was shifting. Coach Matthews didn't change how he treated me in front of the team. It was still the same no-nonsense coach trying to get the best out of his swimmers, but in those quiet moments after practice, or when he caught me alone during drills, there was a different kind of energy between us. A tension that wasn't just about swimming anymore. One afternoon, a couple of days after that sunset conversation by the bleachers, he asked me to stay back again. This time, it was under the pretense of fixing a problem with my flip turns, but the way he looked at me when I came over made my stomach flip. "Josh," he said as I stood next to him at the edge of the pool, "you ever feel like you're carrying something heavy?" Something that's holding you back? I hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, I guess I do. He smiled softly, like he understood more than I could say. You don't have to carry it alone. Not anymore. I looked at him, wanting to say something, but the words tangled up in my throat. Instead, I just nodded again. Then, out of nowhere, he reached out and brushed a stray drop of water from my forehead. His hand was warm, and I swear my heart stopped for a second. I stepped back quickly, feeling awkward as hell, but when I looked up, his eyes were still on me. Calm, steady, and maybe a little hopeful. Sorry, didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, he said quietly. No, it's okay. I managed, my voice cracking a bit. I just wasn't expecting it. We stood there for a moment, the sounds of the pool echoing around us. Then Coach clapped his hands once. All right, enough mushy stuff. Flip turns. He coached me through the turns with patient precision, but I could still feel that undercurrent between us, the unspoken thing hanging in the air. It was thrilling and terrifying all at once. After practice, I walked home feeling a mixture of excitement and confusion. I kept replaying his touch, his words, the way he looked at me. I wondered if he felt the same chaotic mix inside. A few days later, the team had an away meet in a town about an hour from ours. It was the kind of event where you spend the whole day at the pool, racing and waiting, with downtime that's equal parts boring and nerve-wracking. Coach was there, as always, barking orders and keeping everyone focused. But I noticed he kept sneaking glances my way, especially when I was warming up or waiting for my event. During one of the breaks between races, I found myself sitting on the bleachers alone, trying to calm my nerves before my next swim. I wasn't sure why, but I felt like I needed to talk to someone, and instinctively, I looked around for Coach. To my surprise, he was walking toward me, carrying 2 bottled waters. He sat down beside me without a word, handing me one of the bottles. We sat there in silence for a moment, just watching the other swimmers hustle around the pool deck. Then he leaned over, voice low. You swim like you've got something to prove, like you're trying to convince yourself you belong here. I swallowed hard. Maybe I am, he chuckled softly. I used to be like that too, always pushing myself harder, trying to outrun, well, everything. I glanced at him, curious. Everything? He hesitated, then nodded. Yeah. Life, expectations, fears. Sometimes it feels like the water's the only place where you can really be yourself. I smiled, feeling a connection growing between us that I couldn't ignore. Thanks, Coach, I said quietly, for believing in me. He looked at me, his eyes darkening just a little. Always, Josh. Later that evening, after the meet was over and the team was packing up to leave, Coach asked if I wanted to grab a bite at a cafe nearby. My heart jumped, but I agreed, figuring it was just a casual hangout. The cafe was small and cozy, with soft music playing and the smell of coffee thick in the air. We found a corner booth and ordered coffees. For a while, we talked about swimming, school, and life in general. But then the conversation drifted. I don't usually do this, Coach said, stirring his coffee nervously. Taking time out for myself, I mean. I nodded, understanding. It's hard to step away sometimes. He looked at me, and this time, there was something more in his gaze, something vulnerable. I've been holding back a lot, not just about who I am, but about what I want. My pulse quickened. And what do you want? He smiled, a little shyly. Honestly, I don't know, but I think I want to see where this goes, with you. I blinked, feeling like I'd just been hit by a tidal wave. Me? I asked, half laughing, half stunned. Yeah. You. The words settled between us, warm and real. I felt a rush of emotions, excitement, fear, hope. Could this really be happening? Could Coach Matthews, the guy I'd looked up to and maybe liked, actually feel the same way? Before I could overthink it, I leaned in just a little, and he didn't pull away. That night, walking back to the hotel with my heart pounding in my chest, I realized something important. Sometimes, the people who push you hardest are the ones who see the real you. And maybe, just maybe, they're the ones worth taking a chance on. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to find out. Back in my hotel room, I sat on the bed staring at my phone, fingers poised above the screen but unsure what to say. Coach Matthews, words kept replaying in my head like a broken record. I think I want to see where this goes, with you. It wasn't just that he said it. It was how he said it. Soft but sincere. Vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen from him before. I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or if this was reality. But I knew one thing for certain. I wanted to talk to him again. Not just about swimming or school, but about us. Whatever us was. The next morning at the pool, things felt charged in a way I couldn't ignore. I caught him watching me between races, but this time, the look was warmer, less guarded. When practice ended, he asked me to stay back again, and I did, without hesitation. Out in the empty pool area, the sun filtering through the big windows, Coach leaned against the railing, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. So he started, "About last night." I laughed nervously. "Yeah, about that." "Look, I don't want to rush anything or make things weird," he said. "I just want to be honest with you. I've spent so long hiding who I am, and I see you doing the same. It's exhausting." I nodded. "Yeah. I'm tired of hiding." He smiled, but his eyes held a trace of sadness. "The last thing I want is for this to mess up your senior year or the team. But I'm willing to figure out what this means, if you are." My heart was pounding so hard I thought he might hear it. "I am," I said, voice steady despite the nerves. We stood there for a moment, the silence filled with something unspoken but electric. Then, unexpectedly, he reached out and ran his fingers through my damp hair. The gesture was gentle, tender, and it sent a shiver down my spine. "Let's take it slow," he said softly. "No pressure, just us." I smiled, feeling a warmth spreading through my chest. For the first time, it felt like maybe I wasn't alone in this after all. Over the next few weeks, we found moments to connect in ways that felt natural and right. Sometimes it was just a touch on my back to encourage me during drills. Other times it was a quiet conversation after practice, where we shared stories about our lives outside the pool. But it wasn't all easy. Part of me worried what the team would think if they ever found out. I wasn't sure I was ready to be out in front of everyone, especially with Coach being my mentor and authority figure. And Coach himself seemed guarded when others were around, slipping back into his usual strict coach persona. One afternoon, after a particularly grueling practice, I stayed behind with him by the pool. The water shimmered in the fading light, casting ripples across the tiled floor. "Josh," he said, eyes serious, "how do you feel about all this?" "About us?" I hesitated, then answered honestly. "I don't know. It's exciting, but also scary. I keep wondering if I'm messing everything up." He nodded, as if he understood perfectly. "It's okay to be scared. I am too. But sometimes the things worth having are the ones that scare us." I smiled, feeling a little braver. "I want to try. I want to see where this goes." Coach stepped closer, his hand brushing mine. "Me too." Then came the hardest part. One day, during a team meeting, one of the other swimmers made a careless comment about rumors going around the school. I caught the gist of it. Something about me spending extra time with Coach, and the whispers were starting. I felt my stomach twist into knots. That night, I texted Coach after practice. "Can we talk? It feels like people are noticing." He replied quickly, "Meet me by the bleachers." When I got there, he was pacing, clearly as tense as I felt. "We might have to be careful," he said. "This could get messy." I nodded. "I don't want to lose the team or you." He stopped and looked at me, eyes searching. "I'm not going anywhere, but we have to be smart about this." We agreed to keep things private for now, to protect both ourselves and the team. It wasn't fun, but it felt necessary. Still, that didn't stop the little moments, the stolen glances, the brush of hands, the secret smiles. They became our way of holding on to what was real amid the uncertainty. One evening, after practice, Coach surprised me by pulling me aside. "I've got a surprise for you." he said with a grin that felt so genuine it warmed me from the inside out. He led me to a quiet corner of the pool complex where there was a small bench surrounded by fairy lights he'd strung up. I figured we could use a place to just be, he said, eyes sparkling. I couldn't help but smile. You're full of surprises, Coach. He shrugged, laughing softly. Maybe I'm trying to make up for being the grumpy guy all the time. We sat together in the glow of those tiny lights, and for the first time, I felt like maybe we could have more than just stolen moments. Maybe we could have something real. As we talked that night, I realized that everything I'd been afraid of, judgment, rejection, uncertainty, felt a little less scary when I was with him. It wasn't perfect. We were still navigating uncharted territory, still trying to figure out how to balance coach and whatever this was between us. But I was willing to try. Because for the first time, I felt seen, I felt understood. And maybe, just maybe, I was falling for my coach. The weeks after that night with the fairy lights felt like walking a tightrope. Every moment with Coach Matthews was a mix of thrill and fear, like we were sharing a secret too big to keep, but too dangerous to reveal. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, someone to notice, or for one of us to freak out and pull away. But instead, we kept finding ways to make it work. One afternoon after practice, as I was drying off by the lockers, Coach called me over. His expression was softer than usual, but there was something serious in his eyes. "Josh, can we talk?" he asked. "Sure," I said, heart already racing. He led me outside to the courtyard where a few students were scattered around, but mostly it was quiet. We found a bench under a big oak tree and sat down. "I've been thinking a lot about us," he began, "about how this isn't just some fling or a distraction. I want to be honest with you and with myself about what I'm feeling." I swallowed hard, the air thick between us. I know it's complicated. Age difference, the coach-player dynamic. It's a lot, he continued, looking down at his hands. But I can't pretend I don't care about you, and I don't want to keep pretending. I felt a lump form in my throat. "I care about you too," I whispered, "but I'm worried about what people would say. What if the team finds out? Or my parents?" He nodded, eyes meeting mine steadily. "Those are real concerns. We have to be careful, but I want you to know that I'm here. No matter what." The weight of his words settled over me, both comforting and terrifying. I'd never thought I'd hear something like that from my coach. Someone I looked up to, respected, and now maybe loved. We sat there for a moment, the sun filtering through the leaves, casting dappled shadows over us. Then, without thinking, I reached out and took his hand. It was warm and steady, grounding me in a way I hadn't expected. He smiled, a genuine, soft smile that made my heart skip. From that day on, our secret became a quiet force between us. We found little ways to touch base, literally and figuratively, without anyone else noticing. A hand on my shoulder during practice, a quick text after school, sharing playlists when we couldn't be together. But the pressure was building. The team was starting to notice I was distracted sometimes. My best friend Liam cornered me one afternoon after practice. "Josh, you've been off lately." "Everything okay?" he asked, concern clear in his voice. I wanted to tell him. I wanted to scream it from the rooftops, but I just shook my head. "Yeah, just tired." Liam didn't look convinced, but he dropped it. I owed him the truth someday, but not yet. One Saturday, we had an away meet about 2 hours from home. The ride there was quiet, the bus filled with chatter and excitement, but I sat next to Coach, barely able to focus. When we arrived, the pool was buzzing with energy, other teams warming up, coaches shouting instructions, the smell of chlorine thick in the air. During warm-ups, Coach pulled me aside. "I want you to focus today," he said quietly. "Forget everything else. Just swim." I nodded, trying to lock down my nerves. My first race was the 100 freestyle. Standing on the blocks, heart pounding, I caught Coach's eye. He gave me a small nod. The starter's buzzer sounded, and I dove in. The water rushed over me, and for those few minutes, nothing else existed but the rhythm of my strokes, the sound of my breath, the feel of the water slicing past me. When I touched the wall, I looked up at the scoreboard. I'd beaten my personal best by a second. Coach was clapping when I climbed out, a proud smile on his face. "See, you've got this." That night, after the meet, the The team was celebrating at a diner nearby. I was sitting with a few teammates when I caught Coach's eye across the room. He was sitting alone, nursing a coffee. I decided to join him. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat beside him. He looked up, surprised but pleased. "Busy night," I said. He nodded. "Yeah, needed a break from all the noise." We talked about everything and nothing. The meet, school, life beyond the pool. Then, as we walked back to the bus, I felt bold. "Coach, do you ever think about what comes after all this? After the season, after school?" He looked at me, eyes thoughtful. "All the time. It scares me, to be honest. But I also see new possibilities." I smiled. "Yeah. Me too." The bus ride home was quieter, but this time it felt comfortable, like we were sharing something real, something worth holding on to. But the next morning, everything changed. I woke up to a buzz on my phone, a message from Liam. "Dude, I need to talk." Like, serious talk. "Meet me at the park in an hour." My stomach dropped. I had a sinking feeling Liam knew something. Maybe the rumors were spreading. At the park, Liam was waiting, pacing. "Josh, I heard something. People are talking about you and Coach Matthews." I froze. "What did you hear?" "Nothing confirmed," he said quickly. "But if it's true, you need to be careful. People can be assholes." I nodded, heart pounding. "Thanks for telling me." He gave me a worried look. "Are you okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, I've got this." But as I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a storm I wasn't ready for. After my talk with Liam, I spent the next few days trying to keep my head down, hoping the rumors would just fizzle out. But you know how these things go in a small town? Once whispers start, they don't stop easily. I noticed a few sideways glances from teammates, overheard hushed conversations in the hallways, and felt that familiar knot of anxiety in my stomach. Coach Matthews, though, was a constant, not just at practice, but in those quiet moments when the world felt like too much. One afternoon after a tough workout, he pulled me aside. "Josh, whatever happens, I want you to know I'm proud of you," he said, looking me straight in the eye. Not just as a swimmer, but as a person. His words hit me harder than I expected. I realized then that this wasn't just about the team or rumors. It was about being true to myself, no matter what. A few days later, Coach and I sat on the bleachers after practice, the sun dipping low behind the pool. No fairy lights this time, just the quiet hum of the evening. "Funny thing," he said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "I've been a coach for years, but you've taught me more about courage than any race ever could." I chuckled softly. Guess we're both learning. We sat side by side, hands brushing lightly, the silence comfortable and warm. The truth was, nothing changed overnight. Some teammates kept their distance, and the gossip lingered, but I found that living honestly made the weight in my chest lighter, made the water feel more freeing. At school, I started leaning on Liam more, finally opening up about everything. Having that support mattered more than I realized. And Coach? He was there through it all. The practices, the doubts, the small victories. Senior year rolled on, and the swim season ended with a meet that felt like everything we'd worked for. Standing on the blocks before my last race, I caught Coach's eye. No words were needed. His steady gaze was enough. I swam with everything I had, feeling the strength and confidence that came from being seen and accepted. After the race, with the season over, Coach and I walked out of the pool together. No need for secrecy anymore. "We should stop hiding," I said quietly. He nodded. "One step at a time." That night, we told a few close friends. The reactions were mixed, but mostly supportive. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Looking back, I'm grateful for those moments of uncertainty and fear because they led me here, to being honest, to feeling seen, and to loving someone who believed in me when I needed it most. Sometimes the hardest swims are the ones that teach you how to truly live. And with Coach Matthews by my side, I'm ready for whatever comes next.